Hello everyone, Andy here, and here's what you can look forward to in today's episode. In today's episode, myself and guest Steve McGuiness compile our starting lineup of players who never won a Super Bowl. In the theme of the episode, Steve goes through a player who sacrificed success to be loyal to a team.
And a guy who, if he hadn't been so loyal to his team, I think we could have seen him win multiple Super Bowls.
And I forget one huge inclusion.
Oh my god, I thought
How did you miss?
Hope you guys enjoy.
Well, if I say to you, did you know he played basketball?
That's what I'm going for. Tony Gonzalez. I love this. I actually
That's not who I'm talking about.
Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I'm, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, and we're here to talk all things NFL. And today's episode is all about the greatest NFL roster to never win a Super Bowl. Me and my guest, who I'll reveal in a few minutes, are going to compile our offense and defense of the greatest players we feel that have never won a Super Bowl. And before I carry on, this episode is sponsored by Fantasy Game Day app. If you head over to there and sign up, you'll get money back off your first paid lineup by using the code Andy5. And let's take a trip down memory lane. On this day, back in 2015, Sarah Thomas became the first woman to be assigned full-time to an NFL officiating crew, and she was also the first female referee to work at an NFL postseason game, which was in 2018. And in 2004, Steve Bisciotti took over the controlling stake of the Baltimore Ravens on this day in 2004, succeeding Art Modell, who did operate the franchise for 43 years and, of course, infamously moved them from Cleveland to Baltimore. And, of course, those who are celebrating birthdays today, you also share birthdays with Mark Clayton, Roquan Smith, CeeDee Lamb, and Cliff Averill. Now, my guest today is a returning guest. He's well known for our season predictions, both for the Eagles and the league in general. Back with us today is Steve McGuiness. Steve, how are you?
I am absolutely fine, Andy. How are we?
I'm good. Draft is almost here. Looking forward to that. Going to watch it live for the first time in years. I'm doing some content for the podcast in the first day, not so much second or third day, but looking forward to that. And yeah, life is good. Weather is getting better every day. No longer needs to wear a coat to work. It's nice weather now. But yeah, for you, Steve, of course, you mentioned this whole theme is going to be people who haven't won a Super Bowl. Of course, your team, the Eagles, won a Super Bowl just a couple of months ago. How's the hangover?
It's still ongoing, to be fair. It's strange. It's like the first one, I was just so nervous and I couldn't really enjoy it, even when we won it. And the second one, it's just been constant. Like, anytime someone brings up the NFL, it's like, did you know we just won a Super Bowl? Yeah? Oh, how's your team doing? No. Especially with some of our mutual connections who are constantly telling us how great their teams are in the off season, and then they go on to do 6-11.
Yeah, I mean, I did a trend on my socials last year where I compared every Premier League team to NFL teams, and I compared Liverpool to the Eagles because at that point you'd won one Super Bowl, a lot of near misses, and it looks like again we're going to win a Super Bowl. So we're going to win a Premier League, and same year the Eagles are, and I think both these teams have took so long to win one Super Bowl or one Premier League, and now it looks like they're going to win a second. But I think the first will always be better. I think the first will always, mentioning the Eagles, I think for me, the first Premier League title will always be the same. Although the second one will have fans in it, which will be nice in a way. But yeah, definitely a lot of comparisons between both teams because they've had a lot of near misses, both won 2 titles, and yeah. Now, we were meant to have Luke as well on the show, of course, a familiar face to those who are regular listeners to the show. He may or may not join us. He's actually on a boat at the moment, and I don't think his 4G is any good. So he may join us, he may not. But today's episode is all about our greatest NFL roster to not win a Super Bowl. So we've all been assigned different positions as we try and compile our offense and defense. Now, offense, in terms of the non-offensive line part of it, we've all got one quarterback, one running back, receiver, and tight end to nominate. Whereas defense, myself and Steve have one defensive end each. Luke has a choice of having 2 linebackers or 1 linebacker and 1 defensive end, whether he wants to go 3-4-4-3. Steve has a linebacker, as does myself, and then also myself and Steve have cornerbacks, whereas Steve and Luke have safeties. Whereas defensive line, I have the left tackle and right guard. Luke has the left guard and right tackle, and Steve has the centre. But I'm fully aware that Luke isn't here, so he may have to. Steve has done some extra prep, so he may have to step in and do Luke's picks for him. So,
when it comes to the tackles, I think you might be pulling double duty, and hopefully you've picked a couple to select from. I've got a lot of selections here for those positions because it's one of those like when you invite the older guy on. I've been watching since Channel 4 started, like the late 80s, early 90s, so I have a big selection to choose from.
Yeah, well, this is why I want to get you and Luke on, because you have watched it. Probably out of all of my guests I've had on who are regular guests on the show, probably the longest out of all of them, which I don't know how you want to take that statement, but I think for me, I do hate the narrative. I see it a lot on social media, on TikTok videos, where you're trying to blind rank Premier League greats, or you're trying to rank NFL quarterbacks or NFL players, and people like to say the whole phrase, I didn't see him play left, or I can't really put him in there. But for me, it's never been a case of, it's the greatest 11 in your lifetime. It's the greatest 11 of all time, or greatest team. So I think, there's a lot of players on my list that I never saw play. Quite a few of them retired either when I was just after I was born or before I was even alive. And I think you can watch highlights and you can look at stats. I think that is enough if you want to do an all-time list. I don't think you have to have watched them for 10 years. So I'm going to have some old players who I didn't see, but I've definitely got a good ground for all of these players being in our team. So we'll start off on defence and defensive end. Now, Steve, you have the honours of the first defensive end. Who do you want to go for?
Decisions. I have got a few here. Let me just pick out. There was one. I mean, a few, but there was one that really stood out. I just managed to have lost him there. There he is. Probably to me, the greatest defensive end of all time, and a guy who, if he hadn't been so loyal to his team, I think we could have seen him win multiple Super Bowls, because I think there's a number of quarterbacks that have said in their career he is by far the hardest hitter that they've ever been near. And that would be the legend that is Bills defensive end Bruce Smith. 11 times in the Pro Bowl in a 19-year career. The guy was terrifying. He was like the first overall pick from 85. And from the moment he set foot on a field, the Bills were like, we have made the right call here. We know we've got our guy. He was there right through that run that they had in the 90s where they went to like multiple Super Bowls and missed out. And none of it was really on him. It was on the supporting cast around. And if you're a Bills fan, I know we can't say, wide left, but wide left.
Wide right, actually.
Wide right, sorry. Do you know what? I still have I'm sure I actually have one of his shirts around here. So I've got a big collection. And it was one of those, I just got it just for the sake of saying I have to have that wide right shirt.
Well, I want to shout out friend of the show, Martin Liddon, who does have a Buffalo, who's also a Dolphins fan, has a 4 times Bills Super Bowl losers T-shirt, which I think is one of the best memorabilia that you could ever imagine. Bruce Smith is someone that I did earmark as my first choice defensive end. Had the luxury of interviewing a player that might be featuring later on in the episode on a Zoom call, and he told me that this was his toughest opponent, Bruce Smith. What a player. An amazing career, and just unlucky that he never got to win a Super Bowl, because, I think, you think about many of the great defensive ends that have won Super Bowls, the great defensive players in general, Aaron Donald, Reggie White, go back Richard Sherman as well. It's a lot of defensive players who have been great have won Super Bowls, but for Bruce Smith to not win one.
This is the thing with Reggie White, because he was actually first on my list ahead of Bruce Smith, because obviously being an Eagles fan, Reggie White is one of the reasons I got into football. The guy was just terrifying. But when he left us, one of the very first free agency moves way back in the late 80s, early 90s, he went to the Packers and he won a Super Bowl with the Packers. So that's he was the first person I thought of for the position. But then when I went, because obviously I'm not going to say he was dead to me who went to the Packers, but I kind of very much went, I'm not going to watch that team. I'm not going to see what he's doing. I'm just going to focus on my team. Obviously he won a Super Bowl with the Packers, which he deserved, to be fair. He gave us years and years of good service, but he's one of the few players that still rankles with me the way he left the team, because let's say free agency didn't exist until he made it a thing that year. Yeah,
I mean, sadly, no longer with us. what a play was on his day, Reggie White. So my choice is next. Now, Bruce Smith is my first choice, but I did expect Steve to maybe go Bruce Smith. So my next choice is someone I wanted to. There was someone I wanted as an honourable mention, but maybe with Luke not here. I don't know who you've got, Steve, as your other choice, but maybe we could have this person in. But the one I want to go for and definitely lock in is Julius Peppers. I believe he was the first ever draft pick for the Panthers, second overall pick in 2002. I mean, the stats alone are just incredible. I mean, again, not a guy that I saw really play, but Hall of Famer, 9 times Pro Bowler in both the Hall of Fame, all 2000s and 2010 team. And also he had a career with 159.5 sacks, and he had 6, 7, 8 seasons with more than 10 sacks or more, 12 in his rookie year. He had 11 multiple times, 10.5 in 2005, 13 sacks in 2006, 14 and a half in 2008, and there's loads more, 11 in his second to last year of his career. Moved on to the likes of the Packers, the Bears as well. Went back to the Panthers towards the end of his career. What a play was, and I really wanted to get him in. So get Julius Peppers in the lineup. Now,
my thing, and I actually thought this is where you would have gone, given he's a much more recent player, and you've got to watch his entire career.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're going with this. Now, I will say, do we go 3-4 and have 3 defensive ends, or do we go an extra linebacker? Shall we do our 3 linebackers first, and then at the end try and pick 1 linebacker, 1 defensive end, and then maybe we could try and pick between those 2? Because I think I want to put this guy in, but I feel like we're going to may miss out on a linebacker that we love. So, Steve, back to you for your first linebacker.
My first linebacker. Oh, Luke's going to love me here. It is, of course, Brian Urlacher. I mean, there's not much more you can say about Urlacher. I mean, the man defined the position when he was at Chicago. His career stats are utterly terrifying. That number 54 jersey, I think it has been retired. If it hasn't been, it should have been. But I mean, defensive player of the year, defensive rookie of the year, 4-time All-Pro, 8 times Pro Bowl, solo sack tackles leader. The guy is listed as one of the 100 greatest Bears of all time. I'd put him in the top 5 greatest Bears of all time. There are very few players who you can mention in the same breath as Brian Urlacher. What he brought to the position, the terror he brought to the position, can't be understated. And the influence he had on how the Bears team, the mentality of the Bears team, I think that's where his legacy really lies. And to be honest, you kind of look at the Bears since then and you say, when was the time after that they've had a linebacker even close to Urlacher's presence? They just haven't.
The only one I can think of, and I don't think he is anywhere close to being. No, maybe you could argue he's on the peripheries of this team, but Khalil Mack is the only one I can think of that maybe has a shout. I think on his day, he was fantastic. In that 2018 season, where I sort of developed a soft spot for the Bears, he was amazing that year, I thought. But no, not a shade on Urlacher, and he was my choice as well. Now, I want to bring in the second guy, which was my backup in case. I mean, originally I was the one pick in defensive end, but I thought Steve had one as well, so maybe you could have gone with him. So my guy I want to have as a backup is a guy, again, as the theme of the video is, he's not won a Super Bowl, and sadly no longer with us as well. Former Charger Junior Seau.
That was also my second pick.
Might have a similar trend in his episode, but I mean, the tackles he had 1,847 combined tackles in his career, over 1,000 solo tackles in an amazing career. Did play for the Patriots for 4 years, but sadly missed out on the boat of the Super Bowls and was there for that 2007 loss to the New York Giants with the famous David Tyree helmet catch. But yeah, what a play he was. I mean, a Chargers legend, has to be one of the best ever Chargers players as well. 12 Pro Bowls, into the Hall of Fame in 2015, 5th overall pick in 1990, lived up to his draft pick. An amazing, amazing player, and someone I'm really glad I've got into this team. Now,
Seau's another one of those players who, and we will talk about a few of these as we go through, one of those ones who just stayed loyal to his team for too long. He's with a very underperforming Chargers team for a long period of time before he started kind of making moves to try and win a ring and have something as a legacy for his career. But again, by the time he moved on, he was still a great player. He just maybe wasn't that great player. His best years were at the Chargers, and when he moved on, it kind of felt like his heart wasn't quite so much in it. He was still terrifying. He was just, I think, when you move on from the team that drafted you, the team where you found your home in the NFL, it's difficult sometimes to find a home elsewhere. He also didn't mention that he was with the Dolphins for 3 years, and that's probably because the Dolphins during that period were challenging to watch.
Well, I'm definitely not glad I missed that period. And just to put in context as well, I mean, he played in total in his last 3 years. His last 4 years even. He played just 16 games for the New England Patriots. He played that in sometimes in just one season for the Chargers. So yeah, it just shows the difference in maybe quality and availability that he had in his career. Now, of course, Luke was meant to have the other linebacker. So, Steve, back to you. You got a choice here because I didn't plan to have an extra picks made because all the ones have been taken. So you got a choice here. You can either go 2 linebackers or you can go 1 linebacker, 1 defensive end.
Well, I've got to look at what I picked because I've got my little research here and who I think who I should put in there.
Actually, sorry, it's either 2 linebackers and 1 defensive end, or 2 defensive ends and 1 linebacker.
It's got to be JJ Watt. I mean, there's the very definition of a guy who, we said it earlier, stayed loyal to a team which the city loved him, the team loved him. He was part of the furniture. He's like an all-time great in the franchise. But he's in a franchise that was never really in a position to win anything. And they tried desperately to build around him, and they just couldn't. They drafted horribly. And he's one of those where, his talent was wasted on an average team. And by the time he kind of got the courage up to say, look, I need to win something and move on, it was too late. I mean, he had 3 years at the Cardinals afterwards, but he just wasn't the same player. I mean, if you look at his stats, you're talking about Sale there. I mean, he's got like 586 career tackles, 114.5 career sacks. He's right up there amongst like the top 10 of all time. He just it saddens me. I mean, the guy was like Defensive Player of the Year 3 times, Walker Payton Man of the Year, 5 first-team All-Pros, 5 Pro Bowls, NFL sack leader twice in his career, 2020, 2012 and 2015. He's in the all-decade team for the 2010s. There's nothing I can say negative about JJ Watt until he went to the Cardinals. When he'd gone there hoping that he could make a team that he thought was a contender better. But by that point, and it's like we said earlier with other players, the best, what we said to CL, the best years were past, the explosiveness wasn't quite there. He still brought the leadership to the team, which is what you need in a team that wants to kind of, move on from being just a perennial divisional contender to being a Super Bowl contender. But he didn't, the legs weren't there. And I don't think the heart was there either.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was of all the teams you could have gone to, if you wanted to try and win a Super Bowl, and you picked the Cardinals, who, yeah, the Kyler Murray, granted, he was an exciting prospect, but I do think, I don't know whether it was one where maybe no one else wanted him. Maybe that was the thing. Maybe there was that factor. But I kind of like the thing that at least someone, maybe a Packers or Bills, might have tried to go for him. And I do think his best chances came potentially later on in his time to Texans. I think when they had a certain Mr. Cosby at quarterback, I think when he was there in his prime for the Texans, that game that will live harder in memories of Texans fans, that 24-point collapse against the Chiefs in the division round. I think, that was probably the chance for him. And I think, I think that was the chance. I think that was the closest they got to making the conference championship. They should have made the conference championship, and I think that was probably his chance. But still, I think fantastic player. I think it's going to be an amazing Hall of Fame year. Him and Tom Brady retiring the same year, so that's going to be an amazing Hall of Fame class. 2 surefire first ballot Hall of Famers, and yeah. So
and now both owners of English football clubs in the same division.
That's true. Yeah, I actually watched him last night. Actually, ironically, I rewatched bits of the overlap when he came on the show with Gary Neville and Carragher and the rest, and he talked about as well how he would train with different position groups just to try and get better in different areas. I thought, as a guy, he's such an amazing leader and amazing personality, and I think you want to build. I think this the same thing to Claire Campbell. You want to build a team, a good locker room. You start with those two because those two are just model professionals and just all round good guys. Now, Steve, again back to you because you have done the most research out of the two of us. So yeah, you've got a choice here. Either do an extra defensive end and go 4-3, or do you go 2 linebackers and go 3-4? How are you feeling about this one? I would try and find one because I want to ease a burden on you.
Oh, we've got 2 linebackers already, haven't we?
Yeah, we need to have. So we've got so far 2 linebackers in Urlacher and Sayao. We've got 2 defensive ends in Bruce Smith and Peppers. We've got 3 now in Watt as well. We can either go eventually the end and go 4-3, but we still need a 3rd linebacker anyway, regardless of whether we want a 4th or 3rd. So is there any linebackers? I'm going to try and find some for you as well because I want to, help you out a little bit on this one. But is anyone you're thinking of for the linebacker or defensive end position?
For the linebackers, no. It's one of those. It's like I had a couple. I mean, we both kind of banked on Luke being here with his picks. So I think we did a research based on here's what we need to put out and here's our backup just in case. But
I've got one. I've got one. Maybe controversial. I don't know. You mentioned the name Luke. Luke Kuechly, I think.
Yes.
I think get him in personally because I think as a linebacker he was again like JJ Watt stayed true to a franchise for way too long. That wasn't any good, and I know they made the Super Bowl. They could have won that one. That amazing 2015 team with Cam Newton, but fair play to him. He chose his health over his career, and he retired. I think 27. Fairly early on in his career, so I want to get him in. I think this guy deserves to be in here.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to argue that one. And Kuechly was one of those he was in that Panthers team that was actually kind of out there and capable of Super Bowl contending. They just unfortunately had a coward at quarterback in Cam Newton.
Oh, that is a hot take of the day.
I don't think it's a hot take. I think anyone who's watched that Super Bowl and they watched his face when it's like, is he going to dive on that? No, there's one of those. When the game is going the right way for Cam Newton, right, he steps up and he's a presence. When things are starting to fall apart, Cam Newton hides. He disappears. He's not that guy, I don't think. And I think after that, he was never the same player.
No. I mean, to be fair, on the one hand, I think to put his body on the line like he did for a lot of games, sort of scrambling plays was in a way heroic, and it did. I think that did cause his decline. I think later on in his career, I think it was that the amount of hits he took to his body. I think Josh Allen's got to be concerned about that. But yeah, you go back to that Super Bowl 50 play against the Broncos, and even just the interview after the game where he was sulking. It wasn't really the best way to lose the game, and and I think never really was the same after that. And I mean, what a season it was, but never really the same since. And
it's sad. I mean, again, I genuinely think that was part of the reason that Kuechly decided he was going to retire, because he kind of looked at the team around him and went, I don't trust the guy that's our leader or the guy who's supposed to win the Super Bowl for us. So yeah.
To be fair though, to the greatest single season not win a Super Bowl, I think from a quarterback, I think you look at he's got to be up there for the best ever quarterback season to not win one. You can look at Peyton Manning's record-breaking season when they lost to the Seahawks. I mean, that's got to be the one. But certainly it's got to be one of the greatest seasons from a player to not win a Super Bowl. Certainly at the quarterback position. I can't think of many others that didn't. I mean, Kurt Warner, greatest show on turf.
I can think of 2 straight off the bat that have had insane seasons and not won Super Bowls, and they're both current players.
You could argue Jalen Hurts in the loss to the Chiefs.
No, I wouldn't argue Hurts. I would argue 2 guys who play in the same division.
As Jalen Hurts,
Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. Look at the seasons those 2 have had since they came into the league, and neither of them has won a Super Bowl. And when we have this conversation 10 years from now, and I hate saying this if you're a Ravens or Bengals fan, but we'll be having this conversation in 10 years, and I don't think either of them will have won a Super Bowl.
I think Lamar Jackson's time's coming because I said this before a lot of times on the podcast. We all criticised Manning for years, saying he's a choker, but eventually his time came. He won a Super Bowl and then won one again. So I think Lamar Jackson. I think he'll win one. I think he'll win one. Joe Burrow is a bit more of a question mark because that franchise seems to always seem to ruin it for quarterbacks. I mean, I watched Carson Palmer's Football Life, and the way they treated him wasn't great at times. And I think Burrow, by far, one of the best quarterback seasons not made the playoffs. That season last year was insane, but the defense was let down completely. But I think the Chiefs will at some point not reach AFC Championship games. They won't reach Super Bowls. I think when Kelsey retires, they'll have a few years where they dip, and I think that will be the time where either Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, or Burrow come in and pounce. I think that will be their time to shine. I think next year, I think the Chiefs could go out and win the AFC again in Kelsey's last season. But I think after he retires, I think that will be the point where I think either Jackson, Allen, or Burrow reach a Super Bowl and possibly win one as well.
Not two.
Well, I think he could win one, but it's not going to be because of him. He's not going to be the reason why we win the Super Bowl. It'll be Tyreek Hill having one final swan song, or will be some amazing defense, which has been good last year at times, especially down the stretch. But Tua, you never know. I mean, I will say everyone criticised Drew Brees' injury record at one point in his career, and then he ended up, who is a very similar quarterback to Tua, but Drew Brees ended up, turning around the corner and getting a Super Bowl. So I think you never know. People were quick to write off Drew Brees, and I think Tua could fall in that category, but I'm yet to see it. I'm yet to be convinced, as many regular listeners will know. Now, Steve. So now we've got 3 linebackers, 3 defensive ends. Do you want to add the final one as an end or as a linebacker?
I'm sure we don't need a centre here, don't we?
Center.
We have 3 defensive ends and 3 linebackers, so we pretty much need a centre right now.
Well, for defense, not a centre.
Yeah. You don't want to say, oh, God, no, ignore that. Oh. So I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah,
Do I want to add another? Yeah, I've already added him. I don't know. I mean, I'm tempted to add one of ours, but I'm trying to think of kind of Eagles players who really they had that that edge about them that kind of I looked at them and just went, they're terrifying, they're fantastic, they're Hall of Fame worthy. How about someone that played both? I don't know, he's a guard, a centre, and offensive tackle. Nah, not him. Yeah, no, if you've got another suggestion, go ahead. I said Luke's kind of done us here, and that there were so many other kind of options that just haven't come through.
So, and it's a quick Hail Mary here, and try and find some players who've not won a Super Bowl. So most of these players that I'm seeing now, I've already got down or about to talk about. There's got to be someone here.
No, can't put him because he won a Super Bowl. Can't put him because he won a Super Bowl.
I'm gonna get a nose tackle in. Put him in a 4-3 formation. I want to get former Viking Alan Page. I want to get.
Oh no, I'm gonna top you there because I have got one.
Okay.
Definitely didn't want a Super Bowl. Just had to go through that to make sure. DT, Kansas City Chiefs, Derek Thomas. Another one of those ones who it wasn't just about the. I mean, he had some utterly ridiculous seasons. Where he was like, I think he led tackles in the year. Yeah, Defensive Rookie of the Year, 2 times All-Pro, 3 times Second Pro, NFL Sack Leader in the 1990, and I remember that one because he was terrifying that year. He's in the 90s All-Decade time. They retired his jersey. 641 career tackles and 126.5 career sacks. That's more than what But again, linebacker versus defensive end. He was one of those players who we talk about players who just they were great players in a bad team. And Thomas was one of those standouts in a Kansas City team that had 2 or 3 really talented players. It just didn't have that edge that you need to go from being we have a good core of players here to being we have a championship winning, we have a Super Bowl winning group of players.
Fair enough. Let's move on to our final 4, our defensive backs. I want to go first on my cornerback. I really wanted to get this guy in at cornerback, Champ Bailey.
You beat me to it. Okay.
I thought, you've had the first few, and I thought, I better snipe him with this because I thought he may have gone from Champ Bailey. I mean, yeah, he was a high draft pick in '99 from the Redskins, Hall of Famer, all 2000s team Hall of Fame as well, 12-time Pro Bowler. I mean, looking at the stats, one season stood out for me the most was 2006. He had 10 interceptions for a total of return of 162 yards. One of those interceptions returned for a touchdown, a fumble recovery as well. Also got like 66 combined tackles as well. I think Champ Bailey was someone I really wanted to get in because he played for 2 teams that have won Super Bowls, with the back then the Redskins and then the Denver Broncos, and didn't win one. And he actually left the Broncos 2 years before they won it with Peyton Manning. And that 13th season would have been the one, I believe, where they made the Super Bowl against the Seahawks. And playoff wise, he had 5-6 years of those 17 years. Not 17 years, of those 15 years where he made playoffs and didn't sadly win it. But he for me is my first nominee for cornerback. Now, Steve, who do you want to put in just as your second cornerback?
So my second one, this is one of those where it's like, technically he's a cornerback, but he's also a safety because he's one of those players that was just so good he could play both, and that is former Arizona Cardinal Patrick Peterson. He's one of those. I'm not quite sure how to describe Pearson. We've talked before about good players and bad teams. He played for the Vikings. I don't know what it is with players. It's like when you've had a good career and you want to go somewhere to win something, for some reason they join the Vikings, knowing the Vikings will never win a Super Bowl. They're a cursed franchise. There's zero chance if you're there that you're going to win it. But we got to see the best of him at the Cardinals, and he was at the Cardinals when the Cardinals had a team which was capable of going further than a championship game, just never quite got there. But 3 times All-Pro, 8 times Pro Bowler, All-American. He'll be a Hall of Famer almost certainly. He's not in the Hall of Fame just yet, but he will be first ballot almost certainly. 652 career tackles, 36 career interceptions. Return yards of 1,891. How many cornerbacks can say that in their career?
Very true.
But again, he's one of those. He jumped to the Vikings hoping he'd find himself in a better situation, but it's the Vikings. And again, he'd played 10 years for the Cardinals by that point. So when you're sending there, you're sending kind of as a veteran, hoping to just hang on to the rookies, give them some coaching, and get them through to just up a level from where they were beforehand. But it's not going to happen when you go to the Vikings. And it was sad really because his last season was with the Steelers, and he just looked just a shadow of his former self. He just, people were he was getting burned on deep routes. He wasn't deflecting passes and intercepting passes. He was there to coach the younger guys around him. You could tell that's why Tomlin brought him in. But he just, and it is a bit. He went back to the Cardinals, signed a 1-day contract so he could retire a Cardinal, which is what players should do. You should always go back to your first team or the team that made you, and sign your contract there. So Patrick Peterson comes in as my second choice.
Okay, so moving on to safety now. Steve, I'm sorry I'm going to go first again. I'm sorry I'm mentioning this guy. I probably sniped him from you. But I'm going for former Eagle, Brian Dawkins.
You have indeed sniped him from me. He was on my list. I think Brian Dawkins still has, for me, the hardest hit in the history of the NFL.
Well, he was nicknamed Weapon X. Weapon X.
And he was nicknamed that for a reason. Anyone who just puts hardest NFL hits of all time, I'm sure if it's just 10 clips, he'll be in 3 of them. The man folded people up like an accordion. And there were times when he hit people, you genuinely thought, A, are they going to be stretched off? And B, are they going to be put into the back of a hearse? I mean, he did not care about the safety of the people he was tackling. And he played in the era before we really got safety conscious. So he just, Dawkins was terrifying. I have my Dawkins jersey here, and it's one that I wear at London games sometimes. In fact, I might wear it this year. But yeah, I can't put into words from my end how great Dawkins was. But since you've got him as your choice, I'll let you give the stats out.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you mentioned his jersey. I mean, the fact that you got your jersey retired by a team shows the kind of impact you've had. The 9-time Pro Bowler. He's in the Eagles Hall of Fame. If I go further on to his, so he actually won a Super Bowl as an administrator. I will give him that. He did win it.
I suppose, yeah.
But no, I mean, looking at to get, 116 combined tackles 1 year from safety, 1,147 in total in his career. He got 95 in 2002, 116 in 2009, battled with the Broncos, pitching with a few sacks here and there, 37 total interceptions in his career, returned for a yardage of 513, and they got a couple of touchdowns as well from defensive back. So, yeah, and you yourself, Steve, you probably can do a lot more justice. You watched him play for your team. But yeah, for me, he was the first guy I thought of, when I thought of safeties, and yeah, get him in.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Dawkins is when you ever see a picture of what causes CTE, and it's just a picture of Brian Dawkins tackling someone. They had to when they brought in a lot more kind of safety protocols in the NFL in the last 10 to 15 years. A lot of it was they went back and looked at footage of the strongest tackles. And I'd never use the word dirty when I'm talking to Dawkins, because Dawkins was physical but fair. But they looked at the kind of tackles that were going in that were causing long-term damage, and they basically it was a highlight reel of Dawkins hitting people. That's the legacy he leaves in the NFL, is he's easily one of the hardest hitters ever to play the game.
Absolutely. And what a first guy we're going to put in this team. Now, Steve, for our other safety in our defense, which is the final player of our defensive lineup.
Yeah. I mean, you've sniped me in that one, so I'm kind of like, I mean, there's a lot of this. Hang on. See, the problem with this is there's a lot of them, but most of the really legendary safeties, they won Super Bowls because, we use the phrase that, offense wins games, but defense wins championships. And teams that had the best secondaries tended to be the ones that won titles. I really want to put Troy Polamalu in here, but obviously Troy Polamalu won the Super Bowl with the Steelers. In fact, he won 2 Super Bowls with the Steelers. Yeah, we've already got Dawkins in. Ronnie Lott won it with the Niners. Ed Reed won it with the Ravens. Yeah, it's difficult to find really legendary safeties that didn't win anything.
What I'm going to say as well is that in searching for greatest safeties to win the Super Bowl on AI, on Google search nowadays, it gives you an AI choice. It told me Ed Reed originally. I was thinking, I could have sworn he won one.
I don't need AI to tell you that Ed Reed won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and he did. Yeah, and I think that's proof. Anyone listening, don't always trust AI on your Google search. It tells you information like that. I had a whole plan thing about Ed Reed, and it turns out they need to use it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I'd found one there in Darren Sharper, but I don't really want to talk about Darren Sharper given what he did after he left the league, and B, he did win a Super Bowl with the Packers. So, yeah, we're struck. This is a really difficult position to find players with.
Shall we choose a current player? Is there any current players we can pick? I mean, Tyrann Mathieu, but he won one with the Chiefs. No, ignore Tyrann.
Yeah, Honey Badger won one with the Chiefs when he moved. Yeah, I mean, I want to be really selfish and just say, well, what about Cooper DeJean? But he's just won one. I tell you, I'll give you a great safety, right? Who is never going to win a Super Bowl, and that is Sauce Gardner.
Oh, okay. He's a cornerback, isn't he?
So we've said it before. There are certain players who are so good, whether at cornerback or safety, they can play both positions. Sauce Gardner is one of those ones that in a few years he's going to move from cornerback to safety, because at the moment he's quick, explosive, and great guarding, but he will. A lot of cornerbacks move to safety as the legs go or the reaction times go, and younger, faster players come at them. So it's a better, for me, it's a good fit for Sauce. And to be honest, the secondary at the Jets is absolute trash apart from him. They need to go out and draft some good cornerbacks this year, so that he can, so that he's not playing every down for a start, and so that they can kind of spread that around and get sick. I mean, when we watched Aaron Rodgers play there last year, and we were like, well, he's bad, but he's not as bad as the defense. And I remember I saw the Jets play at Tottenham last year before. I can't remember. And I just remember looking at it and thinking there's just some talent wasted there. Breece Hall, obviously running back, I think is going to he's going to fade away. The Jets have so much young talent that I really love, and I would love to see them thrive in a better team. But yeah, I mean, I said Minnesota's a cursed franchise. The Jets, well, they're constant dumpster fire.
I've just found our guy, right? I did some little research just then. An older player who retired in 1979. Now, he's an NFL champion, but not a Super Bowl champion. I've gone for former Washington Redskins and Vikings safety Paul Krause. He made 8 Pro Bowls. He was 1964 interceptions leader. He was named one of the 50 greatest Vikings of all time. He is also named one of the 90th greatest commanders of all times. And he was, in 1964, the interception leader and a 3-time All-Pro. I think he is a good guy to go for. Won it in 69 with NFL champion, which basically the equivalent these days of an NFC championship. That's what the term is. So yeah, he's won an NFC championship / NFL champion, but not a Super Bowl.
Wasn't a Super Bowl. Yeah.
No. So we'll go for that as our defense.
At 83 years old, he's probably better than the current Vikings secondary.
The Vikings are going under the radar. So in total, I'm just going to recap our defense. Defensive end, we've got Bruce Smith, Judy Peppers, and JJ Watt. Linebacker, we've got Derek Thomas, Brian Urlacher, Junior Seau, and Luke Kuechly. On the defensive backs consist of Champ Bailey, Paul Krause, Brian Dawkins, and Patrick Peterson. Now, we're going to go for O-line very briefly because, let's face it, none of you are listening to this podcast dying to hear about the line. So with Luke's absence, I'm taking on the right tackle role, and Steve's taking on the left guard role. So left tackle, I've gone for Anthony Munoz. Right tackle, I'm going for Forrest Gregg. And right guard, I'm going for former Patriot John Hanna. Now, Steve, give me quickly your centre and left guard.
My centre was actually a tough one between two because I had one that I thought kind of, again, I go to wasted franchises. I had a really great centre from the Jets called Nick Mangold, who retired back in 2019, I think. Again, he started 2016. And he was one of those ones that he stuck it out as one of the best centres in the league whilst being surrounded by complete incompetence. He unfortunately was playing centre when the guys around him got pushed back and we got the infamous butt fumble. And I think, to be honest, that's probably the point at which he called it a career. It's just like, the guys around me are just nowhere near my level. The team won't trade me. I'm retiring. But yeah, I'm going to actually go with Marquise Pouncey. Could have gone with Mike, but I'm going to go with Marquise. He was one of those unfortunate ones that he played with the Steelers in between when the Steelers were winning Super Bowls. He had a really great career, 2 times All-Pro, 3 times second-team All-Pro, 9 times Pro Bowler, consensus All-American. Just a fantastic player for the likes of Roethlisberger to play behind, who just always have that. When you have the center position sorted as a quarterback, and obviously at the Eagles we had it with Jason Kelce for years, the team behind him can thrive. Marquise Pouncey and Mangold. I'll give it to Pouncey.
And who's your left guard?
Left guard, tough call. Let me look at a few. There's a lot of interesting choices here. Hannah, no. Randall McDaniel I did get to watch. Interesting, but no. It's one of those. It's not particularly well thingy. It's not really a kind of high-profile position. And I want to put in our players, but obviously our left guards that I could think of have won Super Bowls. Did I mention that we won the Super Bowl this year?
No, not at all, mate. No, I had no idea. I thought the Chiefs won it.
Yeah, well, the Chiefs would have won it if they'd shown up. Now I'll go with Randall McDaniel. Where's he gone? Luke might be having issues with his phone on board. I'm having issues with my Wi-Fi here in the house. But yeah, Randall McDaniel played for the Vikings and the Bucks, and again, one that he was in the team too long. He was at the Vikings from 88 to 99, 7 times All-Pro, 12 times Pro Bowler. He's in the Ring of Honor. He's one of the 50 greatest of all time. Arguably, he's probably one of the greatest of all time. Won the Rose Bowl and Freedom Bowl as a rookie in college. He's in all-decade teams. He played 222 games. Ironically, recovered 2 fumbles. Shall we start adding fumble recoveries to guard stats? Not really their job, but I suppose if you're a Viking, you're constantly collecting them from the quarterback. But yeah, also one of the fastest ever linemen in NFL on 100-meter dash, 10.64, which back when he was playing would probably put him at Olympic level, at least Olympic final level, before Usain Bolt showed up and wrecked everything.
So I think we have our offensive line. So now let's move on to who
Positions you want to hear.
Who? Yeah, exactly. First of all, the most important position, who these guys are protecting on the line, the quarterback. Now, for me personally, there's only one guy you can put in here. Now, I know, Steve, I sniped an Eagles player before you had the chance to in, but I really want to get this guy in. It's Dan Marino.
Of course it's Dan Marino. It's the consensus best player ever to not win.
I mean, there's one guy I think is the best player, but I'll get on. But I think best quarterback, I think for me is Dan Marino easily. I mean, this guy he said it himself actually, he'd have thrown 60 touchdowns in the modern day. I mean, he had all these records for years and years. The stats he's putting up, I think back in his era, a lot of quarterbacks weren't putting up his numbers because it was a lot more of a defensive, there's less protection on the quarterback, so therefore quarterbacks couldn't quite flourish as much as now. But Dan Marino was putting up numbers that quarterbacks are today. I mean, he made one Super Bowl in his sophomore year. He lost to the 49ers in Montana, but only made, I think, 2 actually since then, only 2 conference championship games, I think, since then. He rarely made that game since either. And, can't see that down by his defense. A bit similar to Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson at the moment. And, I mean, the way he could throw that ball was just the arm he had. I mean, in terms of arm talent, I can't think of many better than him in NFL history. I mean, Mahomes on his day, he's got a good arm. Josh Allen, Brett Favre, but I think Dan Marino was just above all of them. And there's a famous clip from the Pro Bowl. I can't think what year it was, but there was a accuracy challenge where it's they still use it these days, I think, where you got the bullseye moving around, you got to try and throw it, and he got every single one he got, and it was an amazing performance. And yeah, obviously fell in the draft, and that was the Dolphins' advantage, and that was his advantage because he got put onto a good team straight away. And yeah, had some great moments, set loads of records. For years, had the passing records until Drew Brees broke it. And yeah, I mean, how he never won one is just a crime. It is, because he was so good and so naturally talented. It's just a shame that he never won one. So yeah, Dan Marino is my section of quarterback. Now, I am actually going to be comparing Premier League players to NFL players in my TikTok channel and Talks NFL, as well as his podcast socials. And I think Dan Marino is Steven Gerrard, because you think about Steven Gerrard as well. What eluded him? The Premier League. Never won one. I mean, didn't have a slip moment, Dan Marino, but what they both had, both Gerrard and Marino, sadly, is horrific ends to their career. Steven Gerrard lost 6-1 at Stoke City. Dan Marino, in his final game of his career, lost, I think it was 62-7 to the Jaguars in the playoffs. I mean, that is a horrible way to end your career. And I think, yeah, Dan Marino, Gerrard, both amazing players, and there's a lot of similarities between them two. So yeah, Dan Marino, it's my choice of quarterback. Steve, anyone else you would have considered?
Absolutely, and I'll give you someone who's even more Steven Gerrard than Marino is.
Don't tell me it's Jim Kelly.
Jim Kelly. I mean, Jim Kelly was one of the. I mean, to get to 4 consecutive Super Bowls with a guy like Andre Reed as your wide receiver and lose all of them, to have, like I say, guys like Bruce Smith in your defense and to lose 4 Super Bowls. I mean, he played 11 seasons for the Bills, yeah, and they won the AFC. I think in 9 of them. They won the division and they got to the championship game in 8 of those years, and they got Super Bowl in 4 of them. His numbers were astonishing. He was one of those that, because ironically, he could have been a Raven before he became a Bill, but apparently the Ravens cheaped out the contract offer, and the Bills offered him something because he was playing for the. If anyone remembers the USFL, he was playing for the Houston Gamblers at the time before he came into the league to play for the Bills. But yeah, I mean, he made the playoffs in 8 of his 11 seasons. Him and Andre Reed is still considered to be one of the all-time great receiving tandems. They connected for 65 touchdowns between them in their career. It's utterly unbelievable. He retired in 1996. Unlike Marino, he retired due to injuries. He sat out the season in 97. The injuries had caught up with him by that point, and he just considered it. But yeah, he decided to just keep himself retired. Yeah, I see. When I was first watching NFL, was back in that era where the Dolphins had the best quarterback in the league, but didn't have the best team in the league. They had the best team in the league was the Niners, and it was just night and day. Montana and Rice was just astonishing. And I think, is it 3 of Kelly's 4 losses were to yeah.
No, I think one was to the Giants, wasn't it?
No,
One was
Giants 80, yeah,
2 was to the Cowboys. I remember those 2 against the Cowboys. Was it against the Redskins as well, or was it the Cowboys as well? Definitely twice to the Cowboys.
But yeah, I mean, he just. I feel for him, I really do, because when we get to other positions, one of his running backs is one of my choices, and it's just I don't think they lost due to a lack of talent. I think they simply sometimes as a team you come up against a team that's just a better match for you, and that's a juggernaut at the time, and that is what that's what the Cowboys were when they played against them. I think, did he lose all 4? But he must have lost to the Redskins. I'm sure he lost all 4 of his Super Bowls to NFC West teams.
Yeah,
that was the stats. Yes, because I remember when they were playing the championship game this year, and I was really hoping for the Bills to win because I thought, well, AFC East versus NFC West only ever has one result.
I think as well. I think we lost to the Cowboys. I think in the Super Bowl, or to AFC East teams, and the Patriots lost all their 3 Super Bowls to the Giants and the Eagles. The AFC
Eagles, yeah.
Hate the NFC East, AFC East. It seems to be in tandem. So are we going Marino? I can't see. You've given me a good account for Jim Kelly, but I think there's no way we don't put Dan Marino as our quarterback.
No, I just on pure natural talent and the fact I absolutely love the guy and the fact he was really funny in Ace Ventura. Dan Marino.
Remember, Finkel is Einhorn. Running back.
Laces out.
Running back. Now we've got interesting. So we're going to probably pick a running back each, a receiver each, and tight end each. Then we can sort of make our. So we will have 7, 8, 9, 10, 5 players to choose from out of our 8 selections. No,
I'm going to suggest to you, given the number of positions I've got, that we go with 2 running backs, 1 tight end, and 3 wide receivers.
Yeah, because I've got 3 running backs written down and 3 receivers written down. I think they're all worthy. I think there's 2 receivers I think have to be in. There's 2 running backs I think have to be in. And then you can sort of, I think, between that running back and that receiver, I think I could probably pick one or the other. So I think we'll see how we get on.
Right.
Now, Steve, we'll head to you first. I'll go receiver first. You go running back first. So who is your first nomination for our running back?
My first running back is the only person that should be in this discussion, and that is Barry Sanders.
Absolutely.
That is the man who we talk about a franchise destroying a career. If the Lions had let him go after he'd given them 8 years of incredible service, beating himself up, broken God knows how many rushing records, and he went to them and was like, "No, I've done all this for you, but the team isn't good enough. I'm not going to win here. Please let me go. And they flat out refused. They were asking ridiculous prices to trade him anywhere else in the league. And they forced him to retire. And, I'm not saying it was in his prime. I'm saying he was at just past the top of his game. He would have gone to any other franchise, any contender, and he would have made them instant Super Bowl contenders. But just because of the way the Lions were then, the way they were managed back then, they refused to let him go. And, and as a result, they lost, arguably for me, the most talented running back of all time.
Yeah, I think for me, there's two running backs. I think you could argue. For me personally, I would go Barry Sanders, but I think you could argue Walter Payton, and I'd be absolutely fine with that. Because he probably was, I'm watching both the highlights, probably a better blocker than Barry Sanders. But I think Sanders, every running back has down years. Every running back, but Sanders had not a single season. He played 10 years in the NFL, not a single season without 1,000 yards or more. Every year, 1,000 yards. 2,053 in 97 is second to last season in the NFL. 99 career touchdowns. I mean, must hurt him that he didn't get that 100. I mean, from watching him, I would love to put Derrick Henry in this, but he sadly is not in that category yet of best running backs, not win one. But I think, when I watch Barry Sanders highlights, it's the nearest thing I've seen to Derrick Henry. I mean, the power behind him. I know the size-wise is nowhere near Derrick Henry, but the way he bruised past defenders was just unbelievable. And
what Sanders did was, it wasn't just what Henry does. He had that explosive Henry speed. He looked bigger because the padding back then was a lot kind of bigger and bulkier. But what Sanders could do was how Sanders could cut and avoid tackles better than Henry. Henry has a very smash mouth, get through you kind of approach. Sanders was very much like, you can't touch me. I am MC Hammer here. Like, you think you've got me, and I've spun out, or I've juked left, or I've cut right, and you couldn't bring him down. And once he got moving, he was very hard to stop, very hard to catch. Probably one of the deceptively fastest running backs that played in the league at that time.
And fun fact as well, for those who don't know, he retired whilst in London, Barry Sanders. That's a fun fact for all of you guys. Yeah. Neil Reynolds talks about it before on one of his shows, where literally no one knew where he was, and out of nowhere he was spotted in London, sightseeing with his family, and he announced his retirement there and then. And I think Neil Reynolds talked about trying to find him, and he retired in London. Now, our second choice of running back is a guy that is actually the last player to win MVP who isn't the quarterback. It is Adrian Peterson is my next choice. 7 Pro Bowls. We're looking at his stats. I mean, he had in total, in 15 years, almost 15,000 rushing yards. In terms of touchdowns, he had 120. He had some amazing performances, and he was just an absolute brute. And again, played for some teams who were dysfunctional or lack of success, in the Vikings, the New Orleans, I believe the New Orleans Saints, and then the Cardinals and Redskins towards the end. But yeah, what a player he was. And there's one of the guys I think we could easily put in. I think maybe you could be. No, we can't have 3 running backs. I think we're going to have to pick between. I was thinking, or do I go to Damian Tomlinson? I think that's the two I'm sort of. I think I want to go for AP, but I think LT is definitely a word.
You've got two Hall of Famers there, absolutely. I would have thrown Thurman Thomas into the conversation as well. Again,
I'm happy to sacrifice Peterson. I'm happy to put Damian Thompson. I'm absolutely fine with that. I think I thought we could have put a third in there, but that would be too ridiculous for an NFL team. So yeah, I think the fact you've gone for, maybe we go for LT as well. Put him in as a second choice. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think you need, if you've got a kind of quick, elusive back, you need a power back in there, and LT is definitely the better choice for that.
Fair enough. Right, now receiver. Now, I mentioned before that I thought Marino was the second best player to not win a Super Bowl. This guy, for me, who I feel personally is the greatest ever NFL player in any position to not win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, you're going to snipe me on this one. I know who it is.
Randy Moss. Randy Moss. How he never won a Super Bowl is beyond me. Again, it goes down to being in one team for far too long. Randy Moss, played for the Vikings for 8 years, the Patriots for 4 years, didn't win a Super Bowl in that time. He was part of that 2017, like Junior Seau. and then Raiders, Niners, and Titans to end his career, but didn't really play much in the final few years. But looking at his, I mean, again, career stat-wise, I mean, over 15,000 receiving yards, 156 receiving touchdowns. I mean, what that guy could do with his hands. I think personally the second best wide receiver of all time, regardless of whether you think it's Super Bowl or not Super Bowl. I think this guy was tremendous. It's like watching Justin Jefferson. You watch Justin Jefferson these days, it's like watching him back in the day. I think Randy Moss was fantastic. He was the man. And I think, yeah, he is, for me, an easy choice to be our first receiver in this team.
See, now I disagree. That is not who I thought you would snipe me with.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm getting you thinking receiver. Okay, so not Randy Moss. Okay. I know there's one guy you love, I think you're going to mention now. I think this is who you're thinking of, but I think Randy Moss is the second best receiver of all time behind Jerry Rice. In my opinion, from watching his tape, I think there is not many more that can do it like him.
Well, again, I'm going to go.
I'm intrigued.
I'm going to go back to the Lions, and I'm going to go to Megatron.
Oh my god, I forgot.
How did you miss Megatron? He was a guy who, in 8 seasons, went over 11,000 yards.
I mean,
this is a guy who.
Randy Moss. I think Randy Moss is better slightly.
No, you were talking there about Jefferson, right? If you look at Jefferson, he has everything that Megatron had, but he's not as quick. Megatron could run the 40-yard in 4.35, and he was 6'5". Devonta Smith can't run it that fast. Yeah, he was the perfect prototype for any wide receiver. Super quick, big-bodied, amazing hands, and he had a great connection with Matt Stafford, right? And the only thing, same as with Sanders, the only thing that ever held him back from winning a Super Bowl was he plays for a cursed franchise with bad ownership. Megatron was one of those ones that, again, like Sanders, he recognized after 8 seasons, he was like, I cannot win a Super Bowl. My legacy will end at this franchise unless I leave and go to a genuine contender. And they just wouldn't let him go. And same as Sanders, he kind of just looked at it and went, well, I tell you what, in that case, I'm retiring. And he did it the same way Sanders did. He did it like right towards the start of the season when everyone was expecting him to come back. Everyone was expecting him to be the guy yet again, kind of like, and push to contend in the division. And he was like, you're not treating me fairly. So he just retired on the spot. Unlike Sanders, I like the Sanders story about how he announced his retirement when he'd already signed like a 3-year contract. And the Lions, being the horrific franchise they were, immediately demanded that he repay a whole pile of the bonus. And, if anything says a mismanaged franchise, like the guy who's an absolute legend but just can't continue anymore because, yes, Sanders actually says in his autobiography, he offered to pay back the entire signing bonus if the team would trade him. And the team refused.
Interesting.
So it's one of those. And Megatron, he's the prototype for the big body receiver that we see in the league now. Guys who are 6'3", 6'4", but can run like 430, 440 on the 40 yards, and have incredible hands. And they have that that competition. Like when they go up competing for the ball, 9 times out of 10, they're the one coming down with it. The closest in terms of body shape to him just now is DK Metcalf. But in terms of just sheer speed, it's probably Justin Jefferson. But he was the prototype for the big body wide receiver that we see in the league now. And I don't think anyone yet has reached his level with that kind of size and build.
I think you look at Randy Moss's career highlights, the kind of catch he's made. I think he's more like Jefferson. I think he's more like Megatron is someone who's actually just retired, who's actually, for me, an honourable mention for the wide receiver role. Julio Jones. I think Julio Jones, for me, is I think the nearest thing to Megatron. I think you think about big body and the way he's sort of, I think the kind of plays Megatron made, those sort of tight coverage plays, catches in traffic, I think there weren't many better than Calvin Johnson when catching in traffic. And I think Julio Jones was, I think, the last 5 years, I don't think, maybe more like last 10 years, not been many better, I don't think, catching in traffic than Julio Jones. Certainly since Megatron retired, I think Julio Jones, who, again, is probably an honourable mention for this list as wide receivers. But for me, I think Julio Jones is the nearest thing we had to Calvin Johnson. Now, our final receiver, I think there's only one guy we can put in here. I want to give a shout out to honorable mentions like Terrell Owens, but for me, Larry Fitzgerald, I think, has to be our third choice.
I want to agree with you because I love Larry Fitz, honestly, and it's like his legacy, his numbers, his everything is superb. But I have I have a team bias on my third choice, and it's not Larry Fitz. And you'll hate him because he's a commentator.
Commentator. I thought you were going to go someone like someone like the Sean Jackson.
No.
Commentator, ex-wide receiver.
Chris Carter.
Oh, nowhere near Larry Fitzgerald's level.
When I started watching, Carter was in the team when you had Randall Cunningham throwing to him. Now, you never got to watch Randall Cunningham play at his peak. He was one of the first players. So when I started watching, we had the likes of Chris Carter, we had the likes of Randall Cunningham, we had the likes of Reggie White. We had a terrifying team, and we had Buddy Ryan just sending teams out there to kill people. And the Eagles were feared, but they were feared not just because they were so physical. They were feared because they had deep threats like Carter, who could just, he could beat you. He could beat you in a contest. He could outrun you. His hands were absolutely solid, and he's genuinely considered to be one of the all-time greats in the league. And for me, he's probably one of the top 3 wide receivers ever to play for the Eagles. And in this case, I'm going to argue ever to play in the league and not win a Super Bowl.
See, that's a statement. I mean, the ones I had were Randy Moss. Obviously, I forgot Calvin Johnson, but he's one of them. Larry Fitzgerald, Terrell Owens.
Honourable mention to Steve Largent.
Yes, Steve Largent. He was good. He was good, to be fair. Again, from watching it on highlights, but I can't see any way you can't put Fitzgerald as our final receiver. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Maybe people who are listening at home will be thinking, "Oh, no, it's not Fitzgerald," but I think it's Fitz. You think about that Cardinals run, the play in the Super Bowl, playing in the previous round against the Packers. I think, I'm happy to put my case forward for Larry Fitzgerald.
I want to argue the case for Carter, but again, it's a team bias on my part, and I'll accept as an objective onlooker, the career numbers for Fitzgerald are higher. So I will give you that one.
Great. So that means you only got one position left to do, and that is tight end. Now, Steve, and there you go first on this one. Who is your tight end nominee?
Well, if I say to you, did you know he played basketball?
That's what I'm going for. Tony Gonzalez. I love this.
That's not who I'm talking about. Tony Gonzalez was in consideration, but I'm talking Antonio Gates.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked again. You put Larry Fitz in there based on numbers. Antonio Gates, one of the all-time greats in terms of yardage, touchdowns, and of course, commentators using the phrase "Did you know he played basketball?" Every time he went up for a contested catch. He was fantastic tight end, 6'5", good blocker. I'm not going to say elite blocker, good blocker, but once he got out into the open field, very, very difficult to stop. Not just in terms of catching the ball and controlling the ball, protected the ball brilliantly. And that's what you want your tight ends, because they are the ones that are going to take the hit. They're going to take it at 5-10 yards. They're not downfield. They can't run away from the wide receiver, the backs. They need to be solid. They need to have great hands, and they need to be able to catch, short yardage, knowing they're about to get absolutely pummeled. Gates was that guy. Absolutely. I mean, I can give you career stats here. There we go. So what? 11,841 receiving yards as a tight end. How many wide receivers would kill for career numbers like that? Yeah, 116 touchdowns. Absolutely insane. 955 receptions, which again I think puts him top 3 of all time in wide receivers. Jersey retired, 8 times Pro Bowler, 3 times first team All Pro. Again, one team man, played 15 years for the Chargers. I genuinely thought the season he retired he was going to come back for one more year, because we're just transitioning from Rivers over to Herbert, and I thought he really would want to try and get that season with Herbert, but never did. And Rivers then moved on to that disastrous year with the Colts.
incredibly their best quarterback in the last 5 years.
That's not really, there's not a lot of
No.
competition there.
It's not a high ceiling, but yeah, I mean, as you all can realize, I had Gonzalez, who also played basketball. I mean, he had, until Kelsey came on the scene, the second most receiving yards. I think he had most categories. He was second in receiving yards behind Joe Rice. I mean, 15,127 yards, 111 touchdowns, 14-time Pro Bowler, of course, Hall of Famer. An amazing story. I watched his Football Live literally on Saturday morning on my iPad, and yeah, Gonzalez was just amazing. I think he was the GOAT before Gronk and Kelsey came onto the scene. I really do, and I think now Gates is also a worthy contender. I think you could easily put both of them in. So I think
I'm very surprised now that it was actually mentioned, Gronk, but I don't know. I don't know if it's a whole person. Maybe I like Gronk, but I also I'm not as big a fan of Gronk because it's the Patriots dynasty thing, and that maybe I have some unconscious bias there. I don't know, but I do want to throw out a kind of honourable mention there to George Kittle, who I think is he's one of the greatest wide receivers who will never win a Super Bowl because I think I've said this in your podcast multiple times. The Niners will never win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy under center. And Kittle, unfortunately, will be one of the people who suffers from that.
He could get a trade. You never know. He could get a trade. I think he strikes me the kind of guy that would stay. I think he would stay. I think he'd be loyal. But you never know. I think he does seem keen to win a Super Bowl. I think also got to shout out Mike Gesicki. I think he's all up on that trajectory. And I
can't always say that. Mike Gesicki. Okay,
he is the greatest tight end to ever play in the NFL. I love Gesicki. He's my guy. He actually.
I will have a pint of what you're drinking.
He actually viewed the podcast story weeks ago. I did an Instagram post celebrating his new contract, and he actually viewed it. So as my favorite ever Dolphins player, which people will probably think is absolutely insane. It's my favorite ever Dolphins player, but that was a pretty cool moment. So yeah, we got Tony Gonzalez and Antonio Gates. That's tough. Yeah, that's tough.
We can play 2 tight end set.
Do you know what I'm going to do? This is probably a bit rogue, probably a bit of a some could argue anticlimactic end to the episode. I'm going to give you guys, the listeners, the chance to choose our tight end in our all-time team. So I'm going to put a poll out on Instagram, Twitter, all the rest, and give you guys a chance. We'll do it by the time the next episode released. We're going to give you guys a chance to vote, and we'll let you vote between Antonio Gates and Tony Gonzalez, and we will reveal maybe not, because we're recording the next episode in 2 days' time, so maybe the one after that, you'll reveal who is our tight end in our all-time team. So yeah, there we are. That is our all-time team, pretty much complete now. So let's go review the offense again. So a quarterback has gone for Dan Marino, a running back duo of Damian Thompson and Barry Sanders, a receiver trio of Randy Moss, Calvin Johnson, and Larry Fitzgerald. And then we'll have either Tony Gonzalez or Gates as our tight ends. And then offensive line, we've gone for Antonio Munoz, Randall McDaniel, Marquise Pouncey, John Hanna, and Forrest Gregg. And there we are. That is where we will end the episode for today. So thank you, Steve, for coming on, first of all.
No, thanks for having me. It's always fun to do these.
Absolutely. It's always good having you on. And we, of course, will have you on again, no doubt, for Eagles preview and our NFL season previews in general. And yeah, that's where we'll end the podcast for today. So this has been the Across the Pod NFL podcast. Our offense and defense of the greatest players to never, ever win a Super Bowl. I've been, as ever, your host, Andy Davis. With me today, our guest, Steve McGuiness. And we'll see you guys for our next episode. Take care.
Bye-bye.